Chucky wanna play?
Look at me, Damien. It's all for you.
I am the devil, and I'm here to do the devil's work.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
They're here.
The 7th episode of the Gruesome Task podcast. I'm here. My name is Deonte, and I'm with my host,
Jose. It's very good to be here. Another week. Let's go.
Yes, another week. We got another great blaxploitation film to talk about with you all. Before we get into it, you can, of course, follow us and find us on multiple platforms. That'll be Instagram at Gruesome Task Podcast, on Twitter at The Gruesome Task. You can find me on Instagram at xdeontems, and you can find me on Twitter at _under-the-knife. Where can they find you at, my good sir?
I am on Twitter at thatguyjose, and I'm on Instagram at j.a.gallegos. Yeah, go ahead and give us a follow, and let's discuss some movies.
Yep. And then also, of course, we still have the horror pack going on. And if you go over to horror pack and use code ITFOLLOWS, that is ITFOLLOWS all together, you can save $3 on your monthly horror pack subscription. And there's always good stuff that's in there, so check that out.
Yeah, of course. It's a very good little monthly subscription that I'm subscribed to as well. It's really awesome.
Yes, and we don't have any reviews to go over this week. I know we waited till the very end of the episode last week. No new reviews. However, we did get 2 more 5-star ratings on Apple Podcasts, so we do appreciate that. As we mention every week, if you leave a review on iTunes, we will read it on the show.
Yeah, those are always welcome. We're really excited for any feedback that you guys have. The 2 that we've already read so far, very appreciative of. And look forward to anything else that you guys might want to drop on there.
Yep, exactly. And without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the movie that we're going to be doing this week. That is none other than Sugar Hill, which was released in 1974. It is a blaxploitation zombie film, and it was put out by American International Pictures, which also did Blackula and the sequel Scream, Blackula Scream, which of course we talked about Blackula earlier in our series.
Yeah, I had totally forgotten that same company had put out Blackula and their sequel as well. Well, we got Sugar Hill here. As Deonte mentioned, it was released on February 13th of 1974. That movie comes at around an hour and 31 minutes. It was written by Tim Kelly, and the director was Paul Malansky. The producer himself was Elliot Schick, working with that American International Pictures. Our cast here is Marky Babe, who plays Diana Sugar Hill. Robert Quarry plays Morgan. Don Pedro Colley plays Baron Samdi. And Betty Ann Reese plays Celeste. Richard Lawson plays Valentine. And Zara Cooley plays Mama Matrice. The budget for this movie was actually $350,000, but the gross came in at $30,500, so it did not have a great release in the theaters. This has kind of been more of that cult classic type film where it's gained followers as it's gone throughout the years. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, it seems like with a lot of these films that we've done that are blaxploitation around this time, none of them made money. They all lost money, and it's taken 40, 50 years for them to gain a lot of popularity, which is very, very interesting. Makes me wonder how people are finding out about these movies that now they're popular and they weren't then. Is it from streaming services? Is it because some random popular horror YouTuber talks about it? Or is it just because companies like a Shout Factory put them out, or Arrow Video and Criterion, they put out these movies and then people follow them? Like, what do you think?
I think it's a mixture of all of them. I mean, people like us putting these movies into light, getting people to realize what they really are. And then, of course, you got the other YouTubers reviewing as well. And you get the Shout Factory, which is really cool because they put so much time into these releases, and you get a lot of bonus features, directors, commentary, and so forth, and you get to really learn a little bit more about this. And I think now, especially the blaxploitation film movement that was in the 70s, where we got the Blackula and Ganja and Hess, I think those are being revisited now because that black movement that's going on, the Black Lives Matter movement, these are very important films to the black community. So I think that's more of would be happening today as well.
Right, exactly. Good point. Good point. And if you want to watch this film, you can watch it on Shudder. I know that's how me and Jose watched it. I'm sure you could rent it on Amazon. I do apologize, I did not check there. However, you can get a physical copy of it through Shout Factory. You can either get that through their website or directly on Amazon for $20.05 shipped as of this recording.
That's not bad. I think I'm gonna add it to my shelf if it's at that price.
Oh, of course. Yeah, I'm gonna have to. This movie was fire. So
yeah, just fill in that collection.
Yep. I know you had mentioned the actors earlier. I just had like a couple small notes about like one or two of the actors. Our star of this film, Diana, which was played by Marky Bay. She was not in too many other things after this film. However, she did play a role in television with Starsky and Hutch, as well as Charlie's Angels. And then once she retired from film, her and her husband actually operated a murder mystery cruise in Los Angeles.
That's interesting. A murder mystery cruise.
Yeah, so it looks like she, went back to her roots and, down with the horror. So that's really cool. I don't know if it's still active. I know that this Marky Bay is in her 70s now at this time. So I don't know if they're still running it, but at least that's what they did upon her retirement. The other interesting kind of fact was Richard Lawson, who plays Valentine in the movie, was in the sequel to Blackula. He was in Scream, Blackula, Scream. He was also in Poltergeist. And many, many years later, he was in one of my kind of favorite comedy movies, Guess Who, which had Bernie Mac and Ashton Kutcher in it.
Wow, those are pretty big movies. I have to watch Blackula, the sequel for that one. But I'm pretty excited to see him in that. I think he was one of my favorite characters in this movie. And then Guess Who? I don't even remember him from that movie. It's been a while since I've seen that too.
Yeah, I don't remember him either. Obviously, he's going to be a lot older since Guess Who came out in 2005. This movie came out in 74. So, I mean, we're looking at 31 years later. So I'm sure he played probably some type of grandfather or, usually with movies, grandfather, minister, priest, something along those lines. So... yeah, I want to go back and watch it too because it's been a while since I've watched Guess Who, and I like to see what he did in that movie.
Yeah, I think that's what's so great, and what I'm learning about this podcast. My outtake from it is that I'm really looking forward to see these other actors in these other movies, and pinpointing them and seeing how well they do outside of the movie that we review.
Mm-hmm. Right. Before we jumped into the nitty gritty, did you have anything else you wanted to add about the movie, or were you ready to get to it?
I'm ready to get to it.
Okay, awesome. So let's do this. Sugar Hill. Now, the beginning of the movie is awesome because mainly for the theme song. There's a theme song that's played in the beginning of this movie and also at the end. And it's called Supernatural Voodoo Woman, and it's by a R&B Motown soul group called The Originals, and the theme is dope. It made me, like, when I was watching this movie, I immediately wanted to just go listen to music from this era. It really put me into that kind of thing, and I guess personally took me back to, that's all the stuff my grandfather listens to, everything from the late 60s going on to probably, I would say, mid 80s of R&B and soul. So I really appreciated that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It definitely gave me that nostalgic feeling of listening to those oldies with my grandma as well. And I mean, it's a great song. I appreciate the fact that they didn't overplay it throughout the movie as well. You get it at the beginning and then at the end. But while that song is playing, we get these opening credits and these what looks like a tribe almost, and they're like doing this ritual, and they start attacking this girl with this snake, and she ends up dying. But then it pans out and you kind of realize it's actually a performance inside this club, and this is where we meet Langston and Sugar.
Yes, Langston is all the guys, and it makes sense because it's this era. They're dressed awesome. I'm totally gonna have to step up my clothing game when this quarantine's over. I'm gonna have to dress like my man Langston. He was looking clean as a whistle, and Sugar, or also Diana, is her, I guess, real name. She was dressed wonderful as well. He comes up and he's talking to her, and that's when this group of thugs, if you will, come up, and they're not thugs because of the way they're dressed, because they're all dressed like Langston, but they're harassing him and Sugar, and they're basically harassing him because they want to buy the bar or the club from Langston, and Langston will not do it.
Yeah, I thought this was a pretty interesting introduction scene because we see Langston really put his foot down. We get a good sense of morals from his character, and these, I guess, thugs, they don't really look like thugs like Deonte was mentioning. They're really dressed up, and I guess it's just more of that time era where these villains or these mobsters were dressed up really nice in suits and so forth. But they're really pressuring him, and Langston really just puts his foot down. He doesn't succumb to being called boy, and while that little gang there is leaving, the main guy, who's actually, his name is Fabulous, is it either works or it don't, and you get that kind of threat feeling like they're gonna come back for him. They're gonna try to force him to sell the club.
Yeah, and one of the other key things to remember is Fabulous is there, and he's the only black man, and all the other people he's with are white, and that'll be a little important later down the line. But Langston ends up going back to his car because he's gonna leave, and as he's going back, that's when he gets jumped by Fabulous and the other four men, and they beat him to death essentially. The fight scenes are a little cheesy, but I mean, it's pretty much what you would expect for this time in the early 70s. I thought it was hilarious because when they lay him out, they like drag him to the middle of the little area, the parking area, and they're kicking him. And when they're kicking him, they're not even kicking him hard. It's like they're just kind of like slightly stepping on him, which I thought was really funny. And like as they're doing it, you just see like blood dripping from his mouth. But yeah, this is where right away in the first like 10 minutes of the film, Langston is gone.
Yeah, I thought that was a pretty interesting way for him to be cut off as well. It's maybe 5 to 10 minutes within the movie, and yeah, I laughed at that part too. They're barely stepping on him, but he's supposed to be dying, and then they just leave him there, and he's spread out with his arms out, and he's just bleeding from his head. And then we get the introduction of, I guess, the head mobster, if you want to call him, head gang, whatever they are exactly. And this is Morgan, and he says that Langston is just garbage, leave it there, when they ask what to do with them. And then we get a shot of this worker. It's like a chef type worker. He comes to throw out the trash, and he sees Langston laying there on the ground. He goes and gets Diane, or Sugar, and she comes out, and she's devastated, crying out, and she does that classic Langston, that yell that you always hear when people are on their knees and crying out for someone who just died.
Yeah, and she's of course really really sad over it, and that's when it cuts back to they're all at the head honcho mobster's house, I would say it's a house, and they're all sitting in this room, and you see Fabulous, the black dude, he's shining shoes, And of course, you get the sense there because in the beginning it's a little weird because since Fabulous approaches Langston, I thought in the beginning that Fabulous was gonna be the head honcho because he came off like that and gave off that impression, but right then we get, well, no, he, to these like white dudes, he's the bottom of the barrel. He's working for them. He's shining their shoes and all that stuff. And they're talking about how they took care of him, and that the club is going to be theirs. And Celeste, who is the head honcho, Morgan, his wife, ends up saying like, how are you supposed to take the club off of a dead N-word? And they use the N-word a lot in this film to talk bad about black people. And he says like, oh, don't worry about it, like I got it covered. And he goes up to Fabulous as he's shining the shoes, and he says, like, oh, you could do better than that, boy. And he says, and like Fabulous is just like smiles at him like everything's okay. And he says, oh, I'll make a good N-word out of you. And it's just very like, I don't know, just kind of telling that Fabulous he's just okay with being in this, role of essentially kind of like a slave.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting as well, because in that first scene with Langston, and he does seem like the head honcho. He's in the middle. He's the one talking to Langston. And then when you cut over to Morgan's house, he's being put to work, doing all these little chores while everyone else is sitting around, and everyone else is obviously white. So it kind of feels like they brought him in just to kind of play with, the black club owners, just to kind of get them on their side, to sell the clubs and so forth. But after that scene, we cut over to Sugar in the club, and she looks like she's doing work for the club and so forth. And we get an introduction to Valentine, which is an old lover of hers. And we also find out that he's also in the force. He's kind of a lieutenant, a detective. He goes there to apologize to her, and he's sad to hear about Langston, but also at the same time he's like flirting with her and so forth. And I know you wanted to talk about this in here, Deonte, where Sugar's talking about how she got her Sugar nickname from Langston.
Oh yeah, so Langston is the GOAT, man. I'm gonna have to take a lot of what my man used here because he's so smooth. So Valentine ends up saying, oh, like I apologize about Langston, like I know you're hurting, all this stuff. And she says, Diana says, oh, this is where me and Langston met. He came up to me, he asked my name, and I told him my name's Miss Diana Hill. And he said, not anymore, your name is Sugar Hill, cause you look sweet like sugar taste. And I was like, ooh, my man. Oh man, that's clean. I when that happened, when I found out, when she says that in the movie, I was like, why did Langston have to die? I wanted more greatness from Langston, but he was taken from us so soon.
Yeah, man, that was real smooth. But I mean, you got to give credit to Valentine throughout this movie. He's pretty smooth himself.
He is, and he looks smooth too. He had the nice fro. He had those like kind of little chops going. He was looking pretty clean. But yeah, that sweet like sugar line. Oh boy.
And yeah, she even mentions that they were supposed to get married and everything. That's the wifey line right there.
Yep.
Yeah,
but yeah. Oh no, you go.
Yeah. Sorry. So they're talking at the thing. She brings up how she got the nickname from Langston, and then she also starts going off about how she wants everybody who was involved with his murder to die one by one slowly. And you see how mad she is in her face. It's great acting from her. I think she's definitely one of the better actors of this movie. So yeah, you get that, and then it cuts over to this house, and you see Sugar arriving at this old house. It's got plants all up and down the walls. It looks abandoned, very scary. And she walks in, and this place is got no electricity, spider webs everywhere, and she's calling out Mama, and we don't know who this Mama is. So I get the impression that she was calling for her mom, but it turns out that it's actually Mama Matrice, who is the owner of this house, and it's a creepy house. Like I said, it's got that dark stuff, and she scares Sugar by putting that hand, and she walks up behind her and she scares Sugar, and then they start discussing why Sugar is there and how she wants revenge for her husband dying or her boyfriend dying. And Mama Matrice is pushing back, saying that she's too old, she doesn't have enough energy to do it. But Sugar eventually comes and says that, you know, she really needs this. She really needs the revenge, and that she doesn't usually believe in voodoo, but she's there because she wants help.
Right. And yeah, then it was like weird at that point. They end up going through the like not swamps, but they're out in the middle of nowhere, kind of out in the forest, or well, I guess they're swamps because you see a crocodile or alligator come up out of the water. You see a water snake come up out of the water, and Mama Matrice is trying to summon Baron, and she ends up telling Diana she needs to, you know, offer something to Baron. So she takes off Diana's necklace and she ultimately offers her ring. And then Baron appears, and Baron is awesome in this role. He's one of the best actors in this movie. He just looks very creepy. He does these weird stares. He's got gold teeth on, and he just kind of looks like, you know, he's obviously, you know, someone that is this, you know, along with Mama Matrice, he's like does voodoo and all this other stuff, but he kind of comes off as like, in a way, he's a hitman, right? He's kind of not a pimp, but he helps Diana get revenge, but he comes off looking kind of pimpish. Like I guess that just goes with the blaxploitation, but it's just, his character is great. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I think it comes more from how he's dressed. He's got that typical pimp suit on. It's very kind of baggy. He's got the vest and the chains and the top hat and so forth. And he definitely looks really scary, you know, like a leader of the undead, which is what he announces. He's got this kingdom of the dead, and he has this army of the dead that is ready for revenge. And this is where Sugar's, you know, trying to get him to help her get this revenge that she wants. And at first she offers up her soul, and he just kind of laughs in her face like, I don't need souls, I have this undead. I'm the leader of this undead army. And they eventually just come to terms, and he brings these undead army back to life. And this scene is actually really, really good in my opinion. This is probably my favorite scene in the movie, where you get these undead creatures coming from their graves under the ground. It's just maybe 3 to 4 minute scene, but the thunder is going on in the background. You get lightning, you get these undead creatures, and the way that they look too, I mean, they look like they were preserved. There's got no bites on them. They don't look like typical zombies, but what's different is their eyes. It's got like bug eyes. You can imagine like a flea, how the eyes are outside of the head, but they're all painted black. And I thought that was really cool. It's very interesting take on the zombie form.
Yeah, I thought that was awesome. And they look, because in a lot of the movies that we've done that are from around this era, all the zombies look like your typical zombies, and they went a real different direction with it. As like you mentioned, they have those like piercing silver like bug eyes, and they're not just the regular eyes, like they really pop out. And while all the zombies were black people, they were also painted with like black and silver paint over them. They had creepy smiles to go with it as well. I mean, everything about them just really gave off a terrifying presence that, amongst some of the cheesiness that you're going to get with a film from this era, when you really think about, if you woke up and you saw one of these undead people, you're going to freak out.
Yeah, it's a very scary form. It's completely different, and it was new to me. I hadn't seen this film before, and I know I read somewhere that they try to go different because Night of the Living Dead had pushed their version of the zombie form where they eat people, and then they took it a different route in this movie just a few years later and did their own spin on the zombie form. And even throughout the whole movie, the Baron calls them zombies. So I thought that was really cool as well. And during the scene, he even says here that to Sugar, he's put them to evil use. It's all they know and want. So these zombies are really meant for evil, meant for that revenge type, exactly what Sugar was looking for. So I thought that was pretty cool as well. You get, these evil people being evil,
Yep, exactly. And right after that scene, that's when it ends up cutting to our first actual, I guess, zombie killing, if you will, where it goes to this like loading dock, and there's a guy that's there who was a part of the killing of Langston. He was one of those guys that was there, and he's the owner of this business, or the head honcho there, and he's telling all these workers that they have to buy in for their work. And there's like a black dude that refuses to do so, and he ends up hitting him, and it's like real. I mean, it's real kind of like hard to watch in a way, because you see how the way he's treating them, and like later on he ends up treating like a white dude that too. So like, yeah, there was some racial stuff there, but that's just, he was just being, an a-hole to everybody. And so he ends up going back into the warehouse, and we get Diana, who's now, I guess I call it, she is now Sugar Hill, and she's like the alter ego, because whenever they go to kill one of these men to get revenge, she's in this like costume, or kind of this like outfit, if you will, and she has an afro, opposed to when she's just regular Diana Hill, she wears her hair down. And she essentially kind of like tells him, like, oh, I know who you are, like, I know what you did and stuff. And that's when the zombies with those crazy eyes appear, and they end up hacking him. So they chop him up.
Yeah, I thought this was a pretty interesting scene for our first kill. You don't actually see these zombies kill him. It cuts from one scene of them showing, these zombies lined up, and then the next scene is blood dripping down from this pallet of like sandbags. And then from there, it cuts to the next scene where we see Valentine play more of that lieutenant role, and he comes and checks with all the rest of the police, and they found this body without a head, and he looks and he's all disgusted by what he sees in this body. And then another police officer comes, and he's like, we got something. They go back into the warehouse, and this is where we see the decapitated head of that henchman whose name was Tank, on that sandbag, and they're all disgusted by it. And I think the decapitated head was a very interesting throw-in, because zombies, you think they're gonna eat people. These zombies are really just more of the followers of the Baron, and they do as he says. They'll kill, chop heads off and kill people, choke them out. And I thought that was a really interesting take on a zombie.
Yeah, it really was. It kind of showed that regardless of how it's going to be done, like these zombies or these undead they're going to kill you by whatever means, and they're going to do so however, So it gave them a little extra level of violence and kind of scariness that we're used to seeing.
Yeah, definitely. It's I enjoy that part. I like how they went in a different direction with the whole zombie thing. But our next scene is where we see Valentine find this shackle in the warehouse, and he's very curious about it, and he doesn't believe that it belongs there, so he takes it as evidence. And then it cuts to Morgan's house, and he's talking with his little henchman, and one of the guys is like, aren't you worried that Tank is dead? They found him decapitated. And Morgan is just kind of playing it off. He's like, it's part of the business. I don't know what you want me to do. He's there living his wealthy life, eating, I believe it was like oysters or something like that. And he's not worried. So then it cuts over to Valentine. He's with this kind of investigator, like science investigator there at the police station. And he's looking through the magnifying scope, and he sees that there's mold and dead skin, and he informs Valentine. They come to the conclusion that this dead skin wasn't just your normal average living human dead skin. It's from a dead person. Like, it was, and they were shocked. They didn't know how to explain it themselves. They both started to believe that maybe these killers were the undead.
Right, yeah. And it kind of feels like a little bit more like as the movie goes on as well. Like Valentine was really the guy that was on top of things, and because he, believed that this was a possibility. And it seemed like the other guys, while they did think it was a possibility, they weren't fully on board with Valentine. Um, but I want to say the next scene after this, that was when Sugar Hill or Diana, she actually went to Morgan's because they were gonna, because Morgan was wanting to purchase the club from her, but he didn't know that she had, or actually, she didn't know that she had owned it because he mentions the club, and that's when Diana says, "Oh, well, actually, Langston passed the club down to me." And Morgan immediately goes into trying to kind of like sweet talk her a little bit and saying like, "Oh, well, someone should take that off your hands so you don't have to worry about the troubles of running a club. Someone who has experience with it should be doing it." And the whole time while this is going on, Celeste, who is Morgan's wife, is just like glaring at her. And, I remember Morgan ends up saying like, "Hey, go, get her a drink, go grab her a drink." And Celeste ends up saying like, "I don't wait on no N-word," and like all that stuff. So she's just like fully anti Diana. And Morgan kind of like low key has a thing for Diana too. He finds her, I guess, like sexually attractive and stuff too. So it's just like a whole thing going on.
Yeah, it's very unsettling hearing Celeste talk like that. She's, very racist against Diana, but the opposite to that was Morgan kind of flirting with Diana and, trying to get her, I guess, flirt with her, just get her to be with him. And Celeste wasn't having any of that. She was very jealous as well. And then she's racist on top of that. So that was added in. But from that scene, it cuts over to Celeste visiting Sugar or Diana at her club. And then, of course, she starts being racist again, telling her, don't get uppity with me. And Diana's coming back with these smart remarks like, "Oh, I don't have to go uppity with you. I always talk down when you're here." And then they start fighting. You get, what was it? Celeste slapped Diana first, and then Diana comes back instantly, slaps her back, and they're fighting back and forth, throwing each other against the wall, knocking each other on the floor. And then it finally comes to where Celeste has Diana kind of choking her over the bar thing. Diana punches her and then throws this ice bucket on top of her, and she, drenches her in this melted ice. And I thought that was a pretty interesting scene to throw in there, seeing that hatred that they have for each other. And, it ends up coming back to bite Celeste in the butt later on. And it was a good scene.
Yeah, and I thought it was funny too that like while all this was going on, the bartender was there just like so like nonchalant, just like still doing his job, like chilling, just watching it go down. And then it was like right at the right moment, he just pulls out the bucket of ice, like because Diana doesn't like say, "Hey, can you give me the bucket of ice so I can throw it on her?" He just pulls it out and he's like, slides it over, and that's when it gets thrown. So it was kind of funny, but he was smooth at the same time.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty funny as well. He just kind of pops it up there and she grabs it and throws it. But it was a pretty good scene. I like how Diana stood up for herself, and we get to see that justice of her not taking those racist remarks and fighting back.
Exactly. And moving like right along with the film, and I think that's something that this does for the most part a pretty good job in, is it moves from like kill scene to kill scene pretty well. So right after this confrontation happens, the next real important thing is we get where Baron goes to that dock, where now there's O'Brien who's there, and he ends up treating, which I had mentioned earlier, the way he like treats all the workers. He gets like a whole handful of face of this white dude, and he's like telling him off, basically saying the same thing, like you better pay for your work share and stuff. And Baron pulls up in a taxi, and he's looking all crazy again, and he tells him like, "Oh, sir, like Morgan wants to see you." And he's just like no he doesn't. He's like, "Yes he does. You don't want to make him angry, do you?" And that's when O'Brien says like, "Okay, fine, I'll go." So he drives him out to the middle of nowhere and pulls over. And at that point, if I was O'Brien, I would immediately be like, "This is weird, like what's going on?" But I guess since these guys are like deep down kind of little mobsters, it's not too suspicious for them to be in the middle of nowhere. So he just starts walking him to this like abandoned house.
Yeah, it's really the middle of nowhere. They're walking through these high grass fields, and O'Brien's got his gun out, being cautious, and Baron's just kind of walking, leading them there. And then they find that abandoned house, and the zombies come out and capture O'Brien from that house and take him kind of next door to the stables where these pigs are. And we see Sugar in her white suit and so forth, kind of playing that persona, as Deonte said. And she's questioning him, like trying to get answers out of him, like why did they kill Langston? Who was it exactly? And then ultimately feeds O'Brien to the pigs, and she mentions the pigs hasn't eaten in a few days, and they were getting really, aggressive and hungry, and they end up tearing him apart. We don't see that part either. Just as we did with the previous killing, we don't really see them getting killed, but we see a flurry of pigs running around, kind of giving the perception that he's getting really tortured and eaten, pulled apart, and so forth. So I like that killing. It was definitely something different, getting eaten by pigs.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that at all. I was thinking because, of course, the undead, they had those huge machetes, right?
Yeah.
How do you say it?
Machetes, if you want to say it like in a white more, but it's machete.
Okay, yeah. Those gimmicks, they had those in their hand. So I figured they was about to get to chopping, but then they basically lifted him up and just threw him in the pig pen, and that was the end of O'Brien. So the other thing that symbolizes, like you mentioned at the first kill scene, she has that there's that chain that Valentine finds, and at this one as well, same exact thing. Diana or Sugar Hill, she has that chain in her hand and she's just like whipping it around. And this, when they go to this kill scene as well, Valentine finds that chain once again. So he starts to speculate, that these murders are related, not just because it's one man and another man that are part of this mob group, but the same kind of traces are being found. And so he actually goes to see Sugar Hill to do a little bit of investigating.
Yeah, and this is where we see Sugar Hill at her job. She's a photographer, filming these models, dancing around and so forth. And he starts questioning her, and this is where we get more of their past. And he's flirting with her, saying that he wants to be with her again, but she's kind of, just kind of playing it off. And this is where we also see Valentine start to question her. He puts more of that detective role on, and yeah, I thought that was really, really good. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that it was really good. I think that the way that they ended up doing this was kind of perfect, and I think it's just kind of interesting as well how what's her name, Diana, it's like she knows this entire time that Valentine is onto her, but she's just so confident in what she's doing that she's not worried about being caught. Like, no point in this film is she ever really worried about like truly being caught.
Yeah, and I noticed that as well. It's a very good confrontation between both of them. She's just kind of playing everything off, and she's just kind of not necessarily denying anything. She just kind of gets questioned by him, like, and then she's just kind of, I don't know how that would happen. I don't know why you would suspect me ever. And she doesn't ever expect to get caught. And I thought that was really an interesting take for her character, just kind of showing how dominant she is, and how she believes in one thing and she wants this revenge. She's not going to stop until she has it.
Right, exactly. And right after that, like I said, the movie keeps moving along. Jumped right into that third scene, which this one was different than all the rest of the scenes because she ends up, Diana, she goes to this kind of like club, and we meet Georgie, who is one of the other guys that was a part of Langston's death or killing. And she basically seduces him to go back to her place. And as she's there, Georgie is smarter and immediately looks around and is like, what is this doll doing here? And she's just like, oh no, like that's just something for the photo shoot. And he's like, no, something is up. Like, what's going on here? And he grabs Diana and like puts her over to the like wall. And then you get Baron, who's just like, oh, because he says like, who are you working for? And she's like, him. And the camera pans up, and you just see Baron like looking crazy creepy. And they have Georgie there sitting down, and the doll is, or they basically use voodoo on him to make it to where he stabs himself.
Yeah, I like this scene a lot too. He's just sitting there kind of against his will, and he doesn't seem to have any motion or I guess any control over his own movements. And she's telling him, I'm gonna set this voodoo doll on fire, and it's got like a little line, and once that sets on fire, you're gonna stab yourself. And he's screaming like, no, that's not gonna happen, I would never do that to myself. And eventually it catches fire, and he just stabs himself and dies. I like this scene because this is kind of where the first scene where we see someone die. It's overacted on Georgie's part, but that feeling, the eerie feeling was throughout the whole setting. And the music here at this point too was more of that horror music. Instead of how the other blaxploitation films were with more of that funk, you get more of that horror music and horror score as well.
Yeah, that was cool, and that's something I did notice as well. Is that this film, while being a little cheesy, it did take it. It did try to take it a little more serious in the horror realm, compared to like Blackula or some of the Ganja and Hess, some of the other ones that we did. But after our boy Georgie died, let's see, what was the next? Oh, we ended up having, what was that boy's name? Who was the next one that ended up dying? I can't think of who it was. I remember the guy like goes to the bar.
Oh yeah. Don't get his name either, but he's talking to the preacher. But before that scene, that's where we get Valentine. We get an introduction to the Dr. Parker when he goes to the Voodoo Museum. And this Dr. Parker he's an expert on voodoo, and he starts giving Valentine more information. Because Valentine was suspicious, so he needs to figure out what's going on, how these undead creatures could possibly be real. And Dr. Parker just gives him, like his access to his whole library. He points to this library of books that are exclusively on voodoo, and Valentine just really gets to work. And then we cut to Morgan at his estate being scared. This is where he starts to realize that, oh, someone's out for him, and he wants answers. So he sends out Fabulous, and he wants answers from the street about what could possibly be infiltrating his little gang. And then we cut to that bar scene where I don't remember his name at all, but that's where he starts questioning that preacher guy, right?
Yeah, he's questioning the preacher a bit, trying to get it like whatever information that he can out of him, because he's, at this point, it's pretty obvious that Valentine knows that some supernatural voodoo stuff is going on with these killings, and he's pretty much keen on, hey, Sugar Hill's has something to do with this.
Yeah, and when we're at the bar scene, that henchman is questioning the preacher, and then we get see the Baron there as a bartender, and he offers this henchman a drink, and he's like, it's called the Zombie. And then the henchman turns, and this is where zombies start attacking him. They pin him against the wall with their swords, and then Sugar Hill, dressed up as her persona in the white suit and so forth, starts questioning him, trying to get answers out of him. And he just kind of passes it up along the line about who the next henchman could be. And then she uses his voodoo doll to just cut his head, and then you see blood dripping from his head while he's hanging there off the wall. I like this kill scene a lot as well, because he looks like he's in pain. He looks like he's getting tortured, and she's just kind of playing with him with that voodoo doll.
Yeah, that one is nice, and this is the second one, because remember, like the first two is essentially like the killings, because the kills are fairly different, but now we're really getting the introduction to the voodoo kind of side of things, which is a little interesting, because of course Mama is a part of this voodoo, I guess, expert, if you will. We got Baron, who's a leader of the undead, but also a part of the voodoo. But you know, I just like that they kept it fresh. It wasn't that every single kill was the exact same.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of gets repetitive in other movies like this where you just see zombies killing, eating the victims, but this zombie movie has definitely new stuff when you think of zombies, especially different killings as well, how they kind of have control over what they're doing instead of just wanting to eat brains. I like that a lot.
Yep, definitely. And then we get, at this point, we have where Sugar is up to something. She meets with Morgan and they agree on a price to sell the club. They agree on a $10,000 price, and Morgan tells her, "I'll have my guy give you the money tonight." And she kind of says like, "Okay, well he better be there." And so we have this gentleman that has the money, and he's going to meet there to hand her the envelope with the money. When the weirdest thing happens, it's this like detached chicken foot, and it's possessed. It's got its voodoo going on, and it starts it starts attacking him, and it just like crawls up his leg, and the whole time while it's crawling up, he's like, no, stop. And it just goes up to like choke him, basically, this chicken foot. And of course the undead and stuff come and do their thing, and there's like this giant snake pit, and basically the guy dies.
This is where the movie went in a completely different direction, and I wasn't expecting this at all. He just walks in the door, you see this chicken foot on like the table, and he looks at it so terrified, and then it just attacks him and tries to choke him out, and it's just this baby chicken foot, and eventually he just kind of throws it down, goes into the closet, and then these zombies come out and they attack him, and then they take him to this, I guess it's back at the house where Mama is, and you see Sugar and the Baron and Mama there, and they're kind of playing with them. They're torturing him, and he's offering the money, the $10,000 that Sugar had asked for. He's like, I could get out of here, I won't bother you again. And she wants that revenge. She's angry, and eventually the Baron orders the zombies to put him in this coffin with snakes. Sugar throws the money at him in the coffin. She's like, take your money, I don't need it. And that's how he dies, in the coffin with snakes. I thought that was these killings are very, very different from one another, and it's very creative, especially when it comes to a zombie movie.
Yeah, I'm like, I wonder if, because I always think about as if the person, it's not like a movie if it's real life, right? Is it that they had planned, okay, let's do this killing, and we got to make each one like so varied that potentially they won't realize that they're by the same people? Or are they just doing them varied as like, hey, we want to get revenge, so let's have some fun? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think it might be the latter, because I mean, I would assume that she wants revenge, and she specifically said it earlier. She's like, I want them to die one by one slowly. So she's probably thinking, oh, I'm gonna do this in so many different ways. I want each killing to be different. I want them to suffer slowly, like she had mentioned. So it's, I guess if you look at it from her point of view and how she wants that revenge, it's a great way to kill each one of these guys.
Right. Yep. Exactly. And we get, shortly after this, we get that one black dude, or actually I apologize. Was this? Oh no, it's not, because that's later. So I'm still on the right path. My notes are all jumbled up. So the next one we get is Fabulous. So we get the black dude, and I was wondering when he was going to die, because we knew his time was coming. He ends up going for a massage, but beforehand, Sugar Hill goes to the massage place and basically pays the masseuse $120, which of course was a lot of money at the time. $120 to quote unquote play a prank on her friend, and the masseuse agrees. So we have Baron, who's like the front desk person, looking all creepy. Like, why would you not be creeped out by seeing that dude at the front desk? And Fabulous walks in, and he's like, "Oh, we got something special for you. Like Frenchie will be working on you today." And like Fabulous kind of looks a little suspicious, but he says like no, like he basically convinces him. So he goes in there, and then Sugar Hill walks in, and she's of course like treating how like I guess like a masseuse would that was trying to like seduce um Fabulous. So she's telling him like, oh, you're tense, and like filling him all up. So Fabulous is getting relaxed. He's like, oh yeah, Frenchie, you know, like all this stuff. And Sugar Hill ends up saying, well, I've got a special for you. I'll give you like a bundle price if we could get like essentially get more of her ladies to work on him. So he's like, okay. So she leaves, and she's gone for a good while. And you know, Fabulous is kind of like, Frenchie, like, what do you, I don't like waiting. Like, I'm impatient. Where are you at? Where are you at? And the angle for this shot is so awesome because it's just Fabulous laying on the table, and you just start seeing little like zombie fingers just moving their way, like scratching his back. And all you see is like first one like hand doing it, and then it's two, and then it's three, and it just keeps multiplying. And he's there like, oh, you're like, oh, that's too rough, like calm down, like, oh, this feels so cold, why are your hands so cold? And then he turns around and just gets the glimpse of those crazy eyes.
Yeah, I like this part too. It's definitely, I guess, one of my top 2 killings of this movie. He turns around, you kind of get that shot of him looking up to these zombies, and you see like 3 or 4 of them with those eyes, and they're looking down into the camera, and that's all you see on screen. It's terrifying, those zombie eyes, and how they dressed, and they got cobwebs all over them, and then they eventually just start choking him out, and he's there on the table being choked out, and he dies. These killings are probably my favorite so far. When when it comes to movies that we've recorded, they're great killings, they're unique, they're something different. And after that scene, we get what do we get here? We get, I'm sorry about this, my notes are all over the place too.
That was where we got Valentine, where he's like fully on to Diana, and at this point she they say she's like, because Valentine, they go out and they go in like the forest area or whatever, and he meets like Mama and Baron, and Baron's like he doesn't believe or whatever. And
oh yeah, we
that
skipped
point,
that
if you want
part.
to talk,
That was earlier. That was actually before, if my notes are right here.
was that before Fabulous died?
Yeah, that was right before Fabulous died.
Okay. So if you want to get into that, I mean, both of these scenes are like back to back, right? Like, so for everybody listening, just pretend like Fabulous hasn't died yet, and this scene is coming up, and then Fabulous dies.
Yeah. Okay, so apologize about that. But Valentine is with Dr. Parker. He's researching, and Dr. Parker tells him about this old estate where voodoo used to happen, and he's referring to Mama Matrice, and he ends up telling her, and instantly Valentine's like, oh yeah, I know that place, and he associates Sugar with that place, and he ends up going to visit, and Sugar's there, and they're talking about him wanting to meet Mama Matrice, how he believes that voodoo is involved with these killings that he's investigating. And then Mama kind of shows up and scares him out of nowhere, and she's like, he's not a believer, I can't talk to him. So then she goes off, and the Baron's kind of being intimidating, saying if Mama doesn't want to talk to you, she doesn't want to talk to you, she'll come find you later. And then he kind of Valentine pulls Sugar aside, and then he starts telling her like, I believe Mama Matrice is involved with voodoo. These killings are really getting suspicious, they're all linked up. And yeah, that's pretty much the scene. He gets really suspicious. He visits Sugar and the estate where the voodoo is happening, and of course Sugar is like playing it off. She's like, I have no idea what you're talking about, there's no voodoo going around here. Baron is just a groundskeeper, he's been working with us for years. Mama's just really old, over 100 years old, she's just gone crazy. Kind of steering the direction away from them. And then we get the fabulous killing, and then it cuts back here into what comes after that scene.
So after the fabulous killing, that's where Diane, Sugar Hill, Diana, Mama, there's some of the undead, and Baron are like meeting, and they say, Valentine, they say the policeman's onto you, and Diana says, I know, and they say, well, we need to stop him, and Diana said, and Baron says, you have a thing for him, don't you? And she says, I do. We need to stop him, but I don't want to kill him. And Baron says, well, killing him would be much easier, but as you wish. And so then we get Valentine where he's walking down the stairs, and out of nowhere, they basically do their voodoo magics, like snap his leg. So he falls down the stairs and breaks his leg.
Oh, yes. This scene is pretty good as well. Yeah, you mentioned it was Mama, Sugar, and the Baron there, and they all look so scary in the scene, the setting, the voodoo setting. Me personally, I've always believed that there's something real about voodoo going on in the real world. So voodoo always just kind of gives me a terrifying feeling, because this probably happens in real life, and you probably have these experts on it knowing exactly what to do and, making things real in the real life. So this part scares me with the voodoo doll, and he just kind of snaps Valentine's leg, and you see him fall down the stairs, and then you cut to the hospital, and Sugar's visiting him in the hospital, and he's in a wheelchair, and he's just kind of suspicious about why she's there, and he knows exactly what's going on. He even hints at that. He's like, all this voodoo, it's all going around. It's crazy how my leg just kind of broke. The doctors don't even know what happened, and she's there like, accidents happen all the time. You never know what could be happening. And I like that she's very consistent throughout, and she never backs down. She's always denying everything. She's always clueless and giving that that sense that she has nothing to do with it.
Yeah, and I think it's funny too if you really pay attention to her tone whenever she's speaking of this. She kind of says it in like a very sarcastic way because she knows what happens. So while she's like totally sticking to her story, she's just like you said, she's like, oh, well, accidents do happen. And like a lot of times too, she's like smiling and smirking and stuff while it goes on. It's just like so great. She's like feels this like empowerment of like, I can do what I want. You're not going to catch me because I'm a stick to my guns kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. She kills this role, in my opinion. I mean, I'm not sure. I would have to do a little more research as to if I'm right or not. But I mean, this is the first movie where we see is a black woman is the lead of a horror film, and I love it. I love the casting of her. Her facial expression. When she's out for revenge, you see that in her face. But when she's trying to play something off and looking sarcastic, like you said, it shows in her face, and you can get that feeling from her. Everybody else in the movie, excluding the Baron, maybe Valentine, maybe even Mama, but everybody else is just kind of poorly acted, and that takes away from this movie a little bit. But I really love her performance.
Oh, see, I disagree. I don't think there's any poor acting at all in this film. This film is a masterpiece, sir.
Oh, okay. That'll be interesting when we give our little reviews there. But yeah, I kind of disagree, but we'll get to that as well. What comes next, sir?
So then after that, we end up getting kind of moving towards the actual very final scene where Diana's in a phone booth, and she calls Morgan and tells him, I'm not selling the club, like you can go stick it, basically. And Morgan starts saying like, you're making a mistake, you bitch and all this stuff. And Diana was like, like basically leave me the hell alone. And Morgan tells his wife Celeste, I'm gonna settle things once and for all with that bitch. And he grabs his gun, and so they end up driving to this house because Diana's not at the club, she's at Mama's place. And Morgan and Celeste pull up, and Celeste ends up waiting in the car, which is totally a terrible decision. And Morgan goes up to the house and he's snooping around with his gun. He's like calling out for her, like, Sugar, where are you? Sugar, Sugar, all this stuff. Like, and that's when he starts seeing all like the his dead colleagues, his other mobsters that were a part of his group. They're all there, and you start seeing them one by one, their dead counterparts. And as the camera's panning and gets bigger, it opens up to where you see Sugar there just smiling, with the Baron who's smiling creepy, and then all the zombies with their silver piercing eyes there, and Morgan just completely freaks out.
Yeah, I like this scene as well. It's you have them all sitting there at the table, all smiling, just looking at them. Nobody's moving. Even Sugar's there. I think the Baron's in the back somewhere, and they're all just standing there and sitting there smiling at them. It's so creepy. Everybody's got the creepiest face on, and each one of the henchmen of Morgan's, you can tell how they died. Like the guy who got eaten by pigs, his parts of his skin were missing. The one that got his head chopped off, you had that bloodline going across the neck. It was very good with the attention to detail when it comes to how they died, and showing that when it pans one by one.
Yeah, I didn't and see. I noticed that, but I really didn't. I noticed the part of where you could see blood and stuff trickling to sense that that was their dead counterparts, but I didn't even recognize the pieces of the skin missing and stuff. So that was a good catch.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. I actually went back and rewatched it a couple times just to see how much detail was into it. Yeah, the makeup and stuff for this movie was really good too. I enjoyed the zombie look. I enjoyed how these guys looked after they're dead. The makeup and the costumes were great in this movie.
Yeah, and when our boy Morgan is freaking out, he ends up jumping out of the window to escape. And when he jumps out the window, at this point, or I should say right before he jumps out the window, the camera goes back to the car where the zombies basically get Celeste. They put their hands and stuff all in the car, and they're kind of like shaking it a little bit. And so it pans back to Morgan, who then jumped out the window. And so you don't know what happens to Celeste at this point. Morgan's making his way through the woodsy forest, and obviously because Sugar and the rest of her gang, if you will, they're all voodoo magicians at this point. So it's kind of like, he can't go nowhere. So they just pop up in the middle of the forest, and he's, freaking out more. And you just see as he's trying to get away, he's surrounded by all of the undead, and he ends up tripping and falling in this weird river that's all filled with mud and dirt and just gunk, and he just basically gets pulled in and what if you will, drowns.
Yeah, I want to say this looked more to be like quicksand. I mean, it was just kind of thicker mud on top of water, but the way he fell in it and swimming around, you could tell it's just definitely water. Maybe it was due to the budget or whatever you make of it, but his death was kind of underwhelming in my opinion. This is the big boss. You need a big death. They didn't even kill him. He just kind of fell in this quicksand or water and drowned, and it was a little bit underwhelming. You had all these great killings, and then you finally reach this one, and it's nothing great, in my opinion. And then you cut back over to Sugar and the Baron and Mama standing there, and the Baron's kind of making a deal with Sugar, saying that he'll take, and this is where you get Celeste too. The two zombies have her just kind of there sitting on the ground, and the Baron's like, oh, I'll take her, so in lieu of yours, because I want you to keep living. I like you a lot. And he ends up taking Celeste up, and they go through the woods and just kind of disappear. And I like this final scene because it pans out, and you get Mama and Sugar in the woods just standing there, and Sugar says, quote for right here, "It's over, Mama. You can rest now." And it's really that good sense of conclusion. You get the thunder in the background, and then it cuts, and then you get that song that the same song that was in the opening credits, and it was a great ending in my opinion.
Yeah, I thought it was good because you pretty much got a happy ending, if you will. Like when you think about Blackula, where it's like Blackula dies, and the girl that was in love with Blackie, I can't even remember her name, but like she was like sad and stuff. When you think about Night of the Living Dead, Ben got shot and stuff. You know, you had kind of sad endings, but this one was happy. You had Sugar's husband Langston, who was killed, and she set out for revenge. You wanted her to get revenge. She got her revenge. The end. Like, you know.
Yeah, it's definitely refreshing getting a good ending instead of everybody just kind of dying at the end. The people that you fall in love with, these characters. Yeah, it's definitely something refreshing, and I enjoyed the fact that Sugar ended up living. I don't know if it would have held up the same if, you know, we saw her leave with the Baron because he owns her soul now. I don't think that would have sat right with me.
Yeah, exactly. And so that was the end of the movie there. My question to you, my good sir, is how many of them things are you giving it? How many pints of blood?
I'm gonna give this 7 out of 10 pints of blood, mainly because like I said, throughout this, I enjoyed a lot with this film. I enjoyed the costumes, the makeup, the music, especially. They didn't force the blaxploitation part of this onto you very much with the funk, and they added some of that horror kind of music in the background when it came to the killings, and especially when it came to the voodoo scenes and the thunder and so forth. It really gave you a terrifying feeling. Like, I was scared for a majority of this, and the Baron himself was a great character. I enjoyed the makeup on him. He looked very terrifying throughout the movie. And then the killings, you know, differentiated between the kills. And I mean, I mentioned I was disappointed with that final kill of Morgan, but overall, I enjoyed the film to an extent. I think it could have been a lot better. I think there were certain actors that could have put a little bit more into their performances, but that's just really my opinion, and that's all that really comes down to. What about you? How many pints of blood?
9.
9 pints of blood. That's a pretty high score there.
I think because the film for me was darn near perfect. I mean, whenever we watch these older movies, I always take their, you know, the time period that it was in into consideration, which is why some of the cheesier fighting scenes and things don't bother me, and I don't really give negative ratings for that. But to me, you had not just, of course, a black lead because it's a blaxploitation film. You had a female black lead, which is cool. I feel like it's different for the time. I know we haven't watched every blaxploitation film, but I want to say that's pretty unique, at least for what we've watched so far. I enjoyed the dialogue between the characters. It was very fitting for the time and put, you know, what was going on during then, even though it's like, even in the 70s, there was still, you know, racist white people. I mean, there's racist white people today, but I loved the way that the black people talked. It was very fitting for the time. I loved the way that they dressed. I thought the movie just flowed very well. There wasn't too much kind of dead space in between each scene. I felt like every scene for the most part was either important or it kind of moved along. I like the ending. I like the intro. You immediately get an introduction to all these characters that are going to play an important part of the film later on. I know we talked about the acting. To me, the acting was perfect. I thought that each character acted very well. You know, obviously, I think the Baron and Sugar Hill are the two standouts easily, but I don't know. I just thought it was really great. I think this is my favorite representation of zombies that I've seen in quite some time in a movie. Just the fact that they look so different than anything else that we even see today was awesome. I would love to see something like that in, you know, modern times, because I feel like they could enhance on it with the way that they look. For me, I really, really enjoyed it. And honestly, going into it, because coming off of Ganja and Hess, which wasn't as good, I guess I didn't have high expectations going into this film, so that's how come they blew me out of the water.
Okay, I could definitely see that. Yeah, I mean, all those great parts that you mentioned, well, most of them, I definitely agree with. I think it flowed really well from scene to scene. But I mean, it's just the acting for me. I guess the time period, I don't take that into consideration as much, I guess, as you do. When watching these films, I'm really just looking at it as a horror film. In I guess instead of a whole movie as together, and that's really how I rate my reviews. It really is just how well does it hold up as a horror movie? Am I gonna want to rewatch it? Am I gonna be scared again when rewatching it? And I guess I watched this maybe 3 times today when recording, and the second and third time just really didn't grab my attention as much as that first time. It was just kind of hard to keep rewatching this movie. After that first time, you kind of know what's going to happen next, and you're not really looking forward to that next scene. I mean, this killing scenes are great. I do enjoy that. I like how they paced them, and how much time was in between each one. But other than that, the dialogue for me wasn't great either. It kept losing me in and out in certain spots, and I think the ending kind of dragged a little bit. In terms of, and especially that last killing, it didn't sit right with me. I didn't believe Morgan deserved to just die and drown or in quicksand or whatever. So that's really what I had problem with it.
Check this out. I just thought of this right now. I'm a genius. So I know the reason why I don't really know, but in my opinion, this is why they had him die the way he did. So when we think about when him and his goons killed Langston, they ultimately beat him up to the point where they beat him to death, and they just left him out there to die. He even said, just leave the trash or whatever there. Now, when you think about it, he falls in the quicksand, and one of the things he mentions to them is, someone help me out of here. And what does everyone do? They don't even say anything. They just let him just get sucked in by the quicksand and drown. So it's the way I look at it now is they're basically treating Morgan the way that Morgan treated Langston, and just Langston ultimately needed help because he was beat badly, and they chose not to help him. They let him die. They're doing the same thing with Morgan now.
Okay, that's an interesting take. I didn't look at it from that, and I guess that makes it a little better. If I look at it that way, but I mean, I don't know. It's it's the final kill. You expect him to go above and beyond for this boss.
I can see that. I guess the way that now I'm looking at it is like Morgan was such a piece of trash that to me that's the way he deserves to go out. Is like, instead of getting this elaborate kill that these other guys got, where voodoo or heads getting chopped off and stuff, for him it's like, nah, bro, you fell in the quicksand. We don't even got to touch you. We're just going to let you go.
Okay. Yeah. It's like, it's not even worth it going through all the trouble of torturing him and stuff. I get that. Okay. I can see that. That's definitely interesting. Do you want to get into some fun facts here, sir?
Yeah. I know you usually come rolled up with fun facts. I just have a couple. Maybe you might have some of these.
Yeah. If you want to go first, I'm definitely for it.
Cool. So I had that the movie was actually shot in Houston, Texas. It was shot around the locations of Heights Branch of Houston Public Library. And the other, I guess, kind of fun fact that I had is the movie was released in 1974, like we mentioned. But when it was released on television, they cut the movie down from the 90 or 91 minutes down to 83 minutes. And they renamed it The Zombies of Sugar Hill, which to me is just too long of a title, and it sounds too basic, especially for the time. I think Sugar Hill is a better title.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Those are the first 2 fun facts I have here. The Heights branch of the Houston Public Library, that's the site. In the movie, it's the Voodoo Museum where the doctor and Valentine are talking about, researching and so forth. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. They shot just right there in Houston. And then they did cut that movie down to 83 minutes. I agree also as well. The Zombies of Sugar Hill just doesn't catch it as much, especially maybe they were just trying to force, oh, this is a zombie movie, something different. come watch it. And that was made for specifically for TV purposes, and then they released it later on VHS and so forth. But it was that 83-minute The Zombies of Sugar Hill release instead of just Sugar Hill, which was the 91 minutes. And then I have here, I thought this one was pretty interesting. So the rapper MF Doom sampled several audio clips and under his alias King, what was it, Ghidorah, on that album Take Me to Your Leader. I did believe that was 2006 if I read that correctly.
2003.
2003. So I thought that was pretty interesting. We get clips from this movie throughout that album.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. I always appreciate when bands or rap and hip hop artists do samples of horror films and different movies and stuff. It's always appreciative. And so I also think it's cool just that he picked this movie of all things, because a lot of people have never even heard of this.
Yeah, for sure. It's very rare that you get these B-list movies like this sampled in audio anywhere. And I like this fun fact right here, because I know you're not gonna like it very much, but so this movie was actually a part of a German series called Schlefaz, where the hosts present and make fun of the movie throughout. And it's kind of like that Mystery Science Theater 3000 show, where they just kind of watch it and then make fun of it while it's playing. I thought that was pretty interesting because it specifically says they pick what they believe is horrible horror movies and they make fun of them throughout the show. I know that's not going to sit right with you there.
Yeah, that little show, a bunch of bums, man. They don't know what they're talking about. This movie was fire.
But I'm really curious to see, or I guess have it translated for me, what they have to say about this, how they make fun of it. Because, I mean, I probably agree with Deonte. This is probably kind of a hard film to make fun of. There are certain scenes where you can laugh a little bit, but I enjoyed it more than it was a comedy for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, and I did laugh at parts to it, and there was parts that I enjoyed, but to me, if I'm watching one of these blaxploitation films, I think that just comes with the territory that there's going to be parts that you end up laughing at, because I mean, that's kind of while these movies were supposed to be good or supposed to make money, a lot of them did, kind of cheesiness and jokingly have certain parts that weren't that great. So, I just think that's okay. It's like the charm of the movie.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think that makes it easier, I guess, if you put it in a show like the Schlefaz or whatever, to make fun of it. But if you take it seriously and enjoy it for an actual movie, it's definitely a lot better than taking it as a blaxploitation film and expecting all that funk and those jokes like we had in Blackula, where you get that pimp coming up to Blackula, asking him for his cape and so forth. What was his name?
Oh man, I don't have his name off the top of my head. I might be able to grab it for you if I still got it here. I got you.
It was something funny, man. I forgot what it was though.
Dang, do I not have it no more?
Well, anyways.
Skillet.
Skillet. There you go. Skillet. Yeah, he was definitely a highlight of that movie. The comedic relief.
Yeah, man. Shout out to Skillet. I hope he's doing good.
But that's all the fun facts I have here. Overall, enjoyed the movie. Definitely go watch it for yourself. Go, and talk to us about it. I'm curious to see what other people besides us have to say about these kinds of films, whether you enjoyed it or not. It's interesting to me. I enjoy what people have to say.
Yeah, and you can do that by either getting in contact with us on Instagram or Twitter. Our Instagram is at Gruesome Task Podcast, and our Twitter is at The Gruesome Task. If you want to talk to one of us directly, you want to tell me and Jose that we're a bunch of shams, or you want to tell us that we're super cool, you can do that with me on Instagram at xDeonteMS, and on Twitter at _under the knife. And Jose, where can they do that? Where can they call you a sham, sir?
Yeah, on Instagram, you can definitely call me a sham. I'm at j.a.gallegos, and on Twitter, I'm at thatguyjose. If you call me a sham, I'm coming for you.
Oh, yeah, he'll throw hands, and I'm hard body, so you don't want to mess with us. So, if you don't want hands, that means you got to go on Apple Podcasts. You have to leave us a 5-star review, 5 of them things, and then you got to write a review. So then we can read it on the podcast, and we can tell you that you're awesome and you're not a sham.
Yeah, exactly. We'll shout you out, even if I have no idea who you are. I would definitely love to hear what you say.
Like our boy Derek, I still don't know who that is. He still needs a new name, but he's a great dude. He gave us 5 stars and left us a review. So be like Derek.
Exactly. So, yeah. Another thing I just wanted to mention: go check out that horror pack. Use the code It Follows. It'll definitely be a good experience for you and introduce you to some new horror, maybe even some stuff that you have forgotten about and seen before. Definitely a good program. I'm subscribed to it, and I'm gonna be for, I guess, a good while. I'm really trying to build up that collection and see more horror movies.
Yep. So do the horror pack. If you end up subscribing to that and you enjoy it, let us know. Take a picture and send it to us. Let us know what movies you got. But that's going to be it for me. I don't have anything else to say from the film. You know where to find us. I guess we're going to go ahead and sign off here. So how many pints of blood are you drinking?
Life sucks, and then you die.